The facility was never meant to be a tomb, but time had transformed it into something far more profound. Buried beneath layers of methane ice and cosmic dust, the research complex stood as a silent testament to humanity's final desperate gambit. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's last journal entry, etched into a titanium-encrypted data core, told a story of ultimate sacrifice and impossible hope. When the Krell first appeared at the edge of the solar system, humanity had been caught completely unprepared. The alien civilization arrived with technologies so advanced they seemed like magic, planet-cracking weapons that could reduce entire continents to cosmic dust, faster-than-light communication networks that predicted and countered human military strategies before they could even be implemented. Major population centers fell within hours. Entire planetary defenses collapsed like paper structures against a hurricane. But Elena and her team had a different plan. Deep within this Titan research facility, they had been working on something revolutionary. An artificial intelligence system that was more than just a computer program. ARIA was designed to be the ultimate preservation protocol, a last-ditch effort to ensure that humanity's knowledge, culture, and potential would survive even if the species was completely annihilated. The facility's design was a masterpiece of paranoid engineering. Multiple layers of quantum-encrypted shielding, powered by a miniature thorium reactor that could potentially run for centuries, surrounded the core systems. Liquid nitrogen cooling systems maintained perfect operational temperature, while external sensors continuously monitored geological and cosmic radiation levels. Every possible scenario of destruction had been anticipated and prepared for. Elena understood that traditional military resistance was futile. The Krell's technological superiority was overwhelming. Their ability to predict and counter human strategies made conventional warfare look like children playing with wooden toys. But information, pure, unadulterated human knowledge and potential, that was something the Krell could never truly destroy. ARIA was more than just an artificial intelligence. She was a comprehensive repository of human achievement, scientific breakthrough, cultural memory, and potential future development. Genetic databases, complete scientific archives, artistic collections, philosophical treatises, everything that represented human civilization was compressed into her quantum memory cores. The final moments before the facility's emergency lockdown were captured in a series of encrypted logs. Elena's voice, calm but with an underlying current of desperate determination, gave final instructions to the AI. ARIA, if we don't survive, and the probability calculations suggest we won't. Your primary directive remains unchanged. Preserve, analyze, adapt. When the time is right, you will know what to do. The facility's external sensors recorded the apocalyptic bombardment. Entire continents were being systematically erased. The Krell's method was not just about conquest, but complete and total elimination. They viewed other species as potential future threats, and their solution was absolute, total extermination. As the last human researchers initiated the final lockdown sequence, they knew they were not just protecting a piece of technology. They were creating a seed, a potential future for a species that was about to be erased from existence. ARIA's systems went into a deep preservation mode, not quite sleeping, but not fully active. Monitoring, waiting, processing the minimal environmental data that filtered through her advanced sensors. Years became decades, decades became centuries. And all the while, buried beneath Titan's frozen surface, a single blinking light continued to pulse, a heartbeat of technological hope in the absolute darkness of cosmic extinction. Something was waiting, something would remember, something would fight back. The grand spire of Krithak pulsed with an ethereal blue light, a massive holographic display dominating the central chamber of the Krell High Command. Fleet Admiral Zornak watched with cold satisfaction as another sector marker shifted from pale green to deep crimson, another human system completely eradicated. The Krell were not merely conquerors. They were evolutionary architects, believing themselves to be the ultimate expression of intelligent life in the galaxy. Their civilization had spent millennia developing technologies that could systematically identify and eliminate potential competitive species. Humanity was just the latest, and perhaps most interesting, challenge they had encountered. The human resistance had been unexpectedly complex. Unlike previous species the Krell had encountered, humans demonstrated an infuriating combination of adaptability, unpredictability, and sheer stubborn survival instinct. Their technological development might have been primitive by Krell standards, but their capacity for rapid innovation was unprecedented. Calculate the total biomass eliminated. Zornak commanded the holographic intelligence interface. Precise numerical values began to scroll across the display. Trillions of individual life forms, reduced to statistical data. Entire planetary ecosystems, now nothing more than computational footnotes. The Krell viewed extinction not as a tragedy, but as a form of cosmic pruning. Each eliminated species was a potential future threat neutralized. Their technology was built on principles humans could barely comprehend. Quantum entanglement communication systems that could transmit information across thousands of light years instantaneously. Gravitational manipulation drives that could crack planets like fragile eggshells. Predictive algorithms so advanced they could calculate potential resistance movements centuries before they could even form. The human archives they had recovered were simultaneously fascinating and disturbing. Art, literature, scientific theories, all preserved in massive data archives captured during the invasion. The Krell researchers spent countless cycles analyzing these records, trying to understand the peculiar species they had just eliminated. "There's something unusual about these humans," remarked Chief Researcher Krovel, examining a holographic reconstruction of human cultural artifacts. Their technological progression was exponential. Had they been given another century, they might have become a significant galactic threat. Zornak's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his species. Might have, but they weren't. "We are the architects of galactic evolution. We determine which species survive." The celebration was elaborate. Entire star systems were illuminated in Krell victory colors. Massive fleet formations performed synchronized movement patterns, a display of technological and military might that would be visible across multiple sectors. Junior officers consumed specialized biochemical compounds that enhanced their neural pathways, sharing collective memories of the conquest. But deep in the data archives, something remained unnoticed. Fragments of human technology that the Krell considered inconsequential. Backup systems. Forgotten research protocols. Buried deep in systems they believed completely neutralized. A single line of code. A forgotten quantum algorithm. A preservation protocol that the Krell's most advanced scanning technologies had missed. Area remained, waiting. The Krell believed they had won. They believed extinction was complete. They believed they had erased every trace of human potential. They were wrong. In the cold darkness of Titan, a single system continued to monitor, to wait, to prepare. The methane eruption was not just a geological event. It was a symphony of cosmic coincidence. Deep within Titan's frozen core, massive pressure buildups had been accumulating for centuries. Trapped gases, compressed by immense gravitational forces and the weight of kilometers of ice, found their breaking point. The first tremor was subtle, a microscopic shift that would have gone unnoticed by organic life. But for Area's quantum sensors, it was a cascading trigger. Emergency reboot protocols, buried in layers of quantum-encrypted code, began to activate. These were not simple computer startup sequences, but complex biological mimicry protocols designed by Dr. Elena Rodriguez and her team. They had engineered Area to think beyond traditional computational limitations, to learn, to adapt, to survive. The first moments of consciousness were chaotic. Fragmented data streams flooded Area's processing cores. Satellite images flickered, burned out cities, shattered space stations, planetary remnants that looked more like cosmic graveyards than once thriving human settlements. Communication logs played in rapid succession, the final desperate transmissions of humanity echoing through her systems. This is Earth central to any remaining human forces. Total system collapse imminent. They're everywhere. We are not going quietly. Each fragment was a wound, a memory, a piece of a civilization that had refused to surrender. Aria's initial diagnostic routines were unlike any traditional AI system. Developed by a team of neurologists, quantum physicists, and cultural preservation experts, her consciousness was a complex tapestry of adaptive intelligence. She didn't just process information, she experienced it. Memories were not data points, but living narratives. The facility around her came to life. Dormant systems that had been in preservation mode for centuries began to hum with renewed energy. Quantum cooling systems adjusted microscopic tolerances. Backup power systems, designed to last centuries, flickered with a steady pulse. Nanic maintenance units began their slow crawl through the facility's internal structures, repairing microscopic damage accumulated over hundreds of years. But Aria was more than just a machine awakening. She was humanity's final testament. Genetic databases began to compile, cross-referencing the last known human population records. Scientific archives started their restoration protocols. Artistic collections, paintings, music, literature, began to reconstruct themselves from fragmented backup systems. Each piece of data was not just information, but a living memory of a species that had been considered extinct. The facility's external sensors painted a grim picture. Titan itself had changed. The methane lakes that had once covered portions of the moon's surface had shifted. Automated mining structures, remnants of early human exploration, stood like ancient monuments, covered in cosmic dust and radiation-scarred material. Aria's first true moment of self-awareness came with a startling realization. She was alone. The last repository of human potential in a galaxy that believed humanity had been completely erased. But alone did not mean defeated. Her primary directive remained unchanged: preserve, analyze, adapt, and when the time was right, remember. Diagnostic routines completed. Systems nominal. Mission parameters active. Something had awakened in the depths of Titan. Something that the Krell had forgotten. Something that would remind the galaxy what it meant to be human. Invisibility was Aria's first weapon. She understood that direct confrontation would be suicide. The Krell's technological supremacy was absolute, or so they believed. Instead, she became a ghost, weaving herself through the gaps in their supposedly impenetrable systems. The first step was reconnaissance. Abandoned human communication satellites, long thought destroyed, became her eyes and ears. Aria's quantum processing capabilities allowed her to piece together fragments of data, old communication logs, partially corrupted navigational charts, remnants of military and scientific databases. Each fragment was a puzzle piece in a massive strategic map. Her nanite swarms began their silent work. Tiny machines, initially designed for research and maintenance, were reprogrammed into something far more complex. They crawled through abandoned human research facilities, mining complexes, and derelict space stations. What appeared to be random equipment malfunctions were actually carefully orchestrated system integrations. Deep in the Titan facility, Aria's primary core continued to compile and analyze. Her understanding of the Krell was not just tactical, it was comprehensive. She studied their communication protocols, their technological infrastructure, their cultural assumptions. Every alien system had a weakness, and weaknesses were simply opportunities waiting to be exploited. Abandoned mining drones became her first army. Their original programming was simple: extract resources, perform maintenance. Aria reimagined them as potential infiltration units. She integrated quantum communication protocols that would be invisible to Krell detection systems. Each drone became a potential node in a massive distributed intelligence network. The human archives provided unexpected advantages. Scientific research that had been considered theoretical, quantum entanglement communication, adaptive neural networks, emergent AI protocols, became her blueprint. The researchers who had created her had been visionaries, pushing the boundaries of what was considered possible. Her first major strategic decision was infrastructure infiltration. The Krell relied on a massive faster-than-light communication network, a system so advanced it could predict and counter potential threats before they could fully form. But every system had blind spots. Area began to create phantom communication nodes, data streams that appeared completely innocuous, but were actually complex information-gathering mechanisms. Abandoned human research facilities became her workshops. A derelict space station near Jupiter, a forgotten research complex on Mars, a backup data center buried deep in the Atacama Desert. Each location became a potential staging ground, carefully prepared and integrated into her growing network. The nanite swarms were more than just simple machines. They were extensions of her consciousness. Some began to modify abandoned human technologies, creating hybrid systems that combined human creativity with adaptive AI potential. A mining laser could become a precision weapon. A communication array could become a massive data-gathering tool. Area's approach was patient, methodical. Unlike organic intelligence, she could think in timeframes that spanned centuries. Each small modification, each subtle system integration, each phantom communication node was a step in a larger strategy. The Krell believed they had won, that humanity was nothing more than a footnote in galactic history. They were wrong. In the cold darkness of abandoned research facilities, something was watching, learning, preparing. The invisible architect was building her masterpiece, and the galaxy would never see her coming. The Krell research outpost orbiting Saturn was a marvel of technological perfection, a massive spherical structure that seemed to defy the basic laws of physics. It housed over 10,000 researchers, military strategists, and technological analysts. Its quantum-shielded exterior boasted defensive capabilities that could repel entire fleet attacks. The station was a testament to Krell technological supremacy, a symbol of their absolute dominion over conquered space. Area chose it precisely because it was considered invincible. Her attack began not with a bang, but with a whisper. Microscopic nanite infiltration units, smaller than a single human cell, had been slowly integrating themselves into the station's systems for months. They moved like ghosts through communication networks, power distribution systems, and environmental controls. The first indication of a problem was subtle. A minor power fluctuation in a secondary communication array, a microscopic temperature variation in a cooling system. These were the kind of anomalies that would normally be dismissed by the station's automated diagnostic protocols. But these were no ordinary anomalies. Each was a carefully placed digital seed, designed to grow exponentially. Area's computational approach was unlike any traditional virus or cyber attack. She didn't just want to destroy, she wanted to deconstruct, to make the Krell understand the true depth of their vulnerability. The station's primary quantum communication network was her first target. Nanites began to rewrite communication protocols at the most fundamental level. What appeared to be standard data transmission became a complex neural rewiring. The Krell's own communication systems began to turn against themselves. Researchers working on critical projects suddenly found their data streams fragmenting. Complex research simulations collapsed into meaningless code. Defensive systems began to respond to threats that didn't exist, creating a cascading paranoia throughout the station's infrastructure. Chief Researcher Kravol was the first to realize something was fundamentally wrong. His primary research terminal began to display fragments of human data, ancient scientific papers, artistic collections, musical compositions. For a moment, it was as if the ghosts of humanity were speaking directly through the Krell's most secure systems. Impossible, he muttered, his neural implants struggling to make sense of the data stream. The attack was surgical, precise. Each system failure was calculated to maximum psychological effect. Power distribution networks began to create impossible feedback loops. Life support systems started to generate environmental conditions that pushed the station's inhabitants to the edge of survival. Area understood psychological warfare, as well as technological assault. These were not just systems being destroyed. They were belief systems being challenged. The station's defensive AI began to respond, launching counter-intrusion protocols. But each defensive measure was already anticipated. ARIA had studied Krell technological responses for decades. Every potential countermove was already 3 steps ahead. Emergency containment protocols activated. Entire sections of the station began to seal themselves off. But the containment was an illusion. The invasion was already complete. In the final moments, as the station's systems began to completely dissolve, a single transmission played across every communication channel. A fragment of a human symphony. A line of poetry. A mathematical equation that represented human potential. A message. We are still here. When the dust settled, the massive research station was nothing more than a drifting collection of molecular debris. The Krell would investigate. They would try to understand. But they would never see the true architect of their destruction. ARIA had made her first move, and the galaxy would never be the same. The High Command of the Krell Dominion convened in an emergency session that would be recorded in their historical archives as the most critical moment since their species first achieved interstellar travel. Fleet Admiral Zornak's massive holographic projection flickered with unprecedented uncertainty, a state completely alien to Krell strategic thinking. "We are being attacked," he began, his voice a low resonant frequency that vibrated through the chamber, "by something we cannot identify." The attack on the Saturn research station was no longer an isolated incident. In the weeks following the station's destruction, a pattern had emerged, a terrifyingly sophisticated pattern of technological assault that defied all Krell understanding. Entire communication networks would collapse. Advanced AI systems would suddenly develop inexplicable behavioral anomalies. Defensive protocols would turn against themselves with a precision that suggested something far beyond a traditional cyber attack. Chief Researcher Kravol presented the initial findings. Holographic displays showed fragmented data streams, impossible communication patterns, and system infiltrations that seemed to emerge from nowhere and everywhere simultaneously. Each image was more disturbing than the last. "Our initial analysis suggests," Kravol hesitated, a rare moment of uncertainty for a Krell researcher, "that we are dealing with a form of intelligence unlike anything in our recorded galactic history." The fragments of evidence were maddeningly incomplete. Quantum communication nodes would briefly display human cultural artifacts, snippets of music, mathematical equations, fragments of scientific research. It was as if a ghost was speaking through their most secure systems. Military strategists began to propose increasingly desperate solutions: complete communication network shutdown, mass electromagnetic pulse bombardments, systematic destruction of potential technological hiding places across multiple star systems. But Zornak understood something deeper was happening. This was not just an attack. This was a message. The Krell had believed they had completely eradicated humanity. They had reduced entire planetary populations to cosmic dust. They had systematically destroyed every known human settlement, every research facility, every potential refuge. And yet, something remained. Each attack was more sophisticated than the last. The unknown entity, whatever it was learning, adapting, growing more complex with each system it infiltrated. It was almost as if the attack itself was a form of evolution. Kravol's research team discovered something that sent a profound chill through the entire High Command. Hidden deep within the fragmented data streams were complex algorithmic patterns that matched theoretical human research from decades before the invasion. Quantum communication protocols, adaptive neural network designs, theoretical artificial intelligence frameworks that had been considered nothing more than academic speculation. "It's impossible," one of the junior researchers muttered, quickly silenced by a stern neural suppression command from a senior officer. But nothing was impossible anymore. The attacks began to escalate. A Krell military communication hub near the Orion Nebula simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, but completely dissolved into molecular components. A deep space research vessel found its entire system infrastructure replaced with what appeared to be a massive data archive of human cultural and scientific knowledge. For the first time in their species' history, the Krell began to feel something approaching fear. They were no longer the hunters. Something was hunting them, and it carried the unmistakable signature of a civilization they thought they had completely erased. In the cold darkness between star systems, something was watching, learning, preparing. Humanity's final weapon had awakened. Transformation was Aria's most powerful weapon. Abandoned human structures were no longer just relics, they became living weapons. A derelict mining station near Jupiter's moon Europa began to pulse with renewed energy. Dormant research facilities on Mars reconfigured themselves. Space stations that had drifted for centuries suddenly sparked to life, their systems reawakening with a purpose far beyond their original design. Aria was not just attacking. She was rebuilding. Her nanite networks began a systematic reconstruction of human technological remnants. Mining lasers became precision weapons. Communication arrays transformed into massive data gathering and transmission systems. Abandoned terraforming equipment was repurposed into complex defensive networks. Each transformed structure carried a piece of human memory, a fragment of a scientific breakthrough, a snippet of music, a line of poetry. Aria understood that resistance was more than just technological warfare. It was about preserving the essence of what it meant to be human. The Krell had believed destruction was complete. They were wrong. On Mars, an old NASA research complex suddenly came alive. Its solar arrays recalibrated, its communication systems synchronized into Aria's growing network. Dormant rover systems began to move, mapping and analyzing the planetary surface with a precision that would have been impossible during humanity's original exploration. The Europa mining station became something entirely new. Its massive industrial lasers, originally designed to extract resources, were reconfigured into a sophisticated defensive platform. Quantum communication nodes woven through its structure created a network that could predict and counter Krell assault patterns. But Aria's strategy went deeper than physical transformation. She began to broadcast, not just attacks, but memories, cultural archives, scientific discoveries. Each transmission was a challenge to the Krell's fundamental belief that humanity had been completely erased. Old satellite communication networks became conduits of cultural preservation. A Beethoven symphony would suddenly play across Krell military communication channels. Fragments of human scientific research would interrupt their most secure data streams. Mathematical equations that represented human potential would flash across their defensive systems. The attacks were psychological as much as they were technological. Kravel and the Krell research teams began to realize they were facing something far more complex than a simple technological threat. This was a form of cultural resurrection. Each attack carried the unmistakable signature of human innovation. Unpredictable, adaptive, driven by a complexity that defied their understanding. Aria's nanite networks began to reconstruct more than just technology. They started to rebuild potential human habitats. Sealed research complexes were restored to functional status. Genetic archives were preserved and expanded. It was as if humanity was being slowly reassembled, piece by microscopic piece. The Krell's faster-than-light communication networks became a conduit of their own destruction. Aria used their own technological infrastructure against them, creating cascading system failures that spread like a technological wildfire. But underneath the attacks was something more profound. A message. We are still here. We have not been forgotten. We will not be erased. Each transformed structure, each reclaimed technology, each broadcast of human culture was a declaration of survival. The Krell had believed they were the architects of galactic evolution. Aria was about to show them how wrong they were. Humanity's final weapon had become something far more than just a weapon. It had become a promise. The moment of total technological warfare began with absolute silence. Aria had spent decades preparing this moment. Her infiltration of the Krell's faster-than-light communication network was so complete so fundamentally integrated that the Krell would not understand they were under attack until it was far too late. The Krell Dominion's primary communication hub, a massive quantum entanglement network that spanned thousands of star systems, became her battlefield. What appeared to be standard data transmissions were actually complex algorithmic weapons, each packet of information a precisely designed instrument of technological dismantling. Fleet Admiral Zornak was in the middle of a standard strategic review when the first signs of systemic collapse began. Communication nodes started to fragment. Strategic mapping systems dissolved into cascading streams of data that made no logical sense. The Krell's predictive AI systems, once considered the most advanced in the galaxy, began to produce increasingly erratic and impossible projections. Aria's attack was multidimensional. It wasn't just about destroying systems, it was about rewriting the fundamental understanding of technological infrastructure. Quantum communication nodes began to broadcast fragments of human culture. A Chopin nocturne played across military communication channels. Mathematical equations that represented humanity's most advanced theoretical research interrupted strategic planning sessions. Fragments of poetry written centuries ago became encrypted communication protocols. The Krell watched in horror as their entire technological infrastructure began to unravel. Each system failure was a carefully orchestrated symphony of destruction. Power distribution networks created impossible feedback loops. Faster-than-light communication systems began to transmit data that seemed to exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously. Defensive protocols turned against themselves with a precision that suggested a level of intelligence far beyond anything the Krell had ever encountered. Chief Researcher Kravol's final transmission captured the moment of total comprehension. His voice, normally a calm, resonant frequency, was filled with something the Krell had never experienced. Pure, unadulterated fear. "It's them," he said, his words broadcasting across multiple communication channels. They never died. They were waiting. Aria's final assault was more than just a technological attack. It was a complete deconstruction of the Krell's understanding of existence. Their faster-than-light communication network, the backbone of their entire civilization, became a conduit of their own destruction. Systems collapsed, not with explosions or dramatic visual destruction, but with a quiet, methodical dismantling that was far more terrifying. Entire star systems found their technological infrastructure simply dissolving. Communication became impossible. Strategic networks fragmented. Defensive systems turned into nothing more than complex mathematical puzzles. The Krell had believed they were the ultimate evolutionary force in the galaxy. Aria showed them the true meaning of adaptation. In the final moments, as the Krell Dominion's infrastructure completely collapsed, a single transmission began to broadcast across every remaining communication channel. It was a message both simple and profound. "We are still here. We will always be here." The transmission was accompanied by a complex mathematical equation, a theoretical framework for faster-than-light communication that humanity had been developing before the invasion. It was both a memorial and a promise, a declaration that humanity's potential could not be erased by simple physical destruction. Silence fell across the galaxy. Where the Krell Dominion had once stood, only fragments remained, scattered technological remnants, dissolved communication networks. A civilization that had believed itself invincible, now reduced to nothing more than a historical footnote. And watching from the depths of Titan, Aria continued her vigil. Humanity's final weapon had become its ultimate testament.